Hi there, welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric Ward Weaver Sjerven, Goalie of the Ridgar Folk here in East Texas, and I'd like to welcome you to the show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects. If you haven't already, please subscribe down below, ding the bell. This keeps you up to date with everything I do. Plus, it brings more of videos like this up to your feed. Kind of trains those YouTube algorithms to say, hey, I like things that are, hashtag heathenry kind of stuff. So ding the bell. And then definitely give it a thumbs up if you don't mind. That really helps with it. Helps to get it out in front of other people. And it helps to, of course, aggregate your feed with other heathen stuff. So we're going to roll on, guys. Today's subject is something that is kind of a building and ongoing thing. I've decided that off and on I'm going to come back with little tips and tidbits and tricks and things like that to help with some community building elements, okay? And I've had people ask me routinely and repeatedly, how do I build a tribe, okay? And so we've done videos before about grassroots heathenry and why it's important to build from a tribe to the tribe up, and why I'm not a huge fan of national organizations. That's no secret. I'm not going to beleaguer the topic at the moment. You can go back and watch my previous stuff and understand context for that statement. But nonetheless, not a fan of national orgs in general. And I am a proponent for, hashtag grassroots heathenry, because I feel like that's where heathenry is at. I feel that's where the crux of it is. Now, I will tell you, heathenry starts in the home. And so this is kind of the subject of today's thing, We're going to look at a little bit of how to build a tribe, how to build a community. And so one of the first things that I want to talk about, the subject of today's video, is the essence of hearth culture, or individual cultic practice, okay? Yes, heathenry is a social folkway, a social culture. It's built on social interactions between individuals. I see it largely as tribal, with natural tribes arising out of clans or families that have tied themselves together towards a common goal. In olden days, the common goal was survival and increasing the well-being of the family. Today, we have the same thing with the added element of one of the reasons we bind together is because of our commonality of culture and faith. Faith is an inappropriate word, belief structure, let me put it that way. I don't like the use of the word faith with heathenry. I can do another video on that one, but I don't like it. So anyway, it's not applicable. Ultimately speaking, it seems like, at least from what I can see, ritual is most powerful when you're bound together as a tribe, and it is the tribe of people, tribe of men and women, who are relating to the gods and goddesses. And this is tribe to tribe relationships, intertribal politics, if you will, the tribe of men with the tribe of the gods. This I see is the most effective. This does not mean that individual practices, individual rituals are not effective. All right, they definitely are effective. And in some ways can be more effective because they can be more targeted, specific things that you're trying to work with, as opposed to a generality of exchange of luck with the gods. And so it's important to realize that just because you're solo doesn't mean you can't do heathenry, okay? I place a lot of emphasis on tribe. I place a lot of emphasis on building local communities and starting things up and trying to get things rolling, because ultimately what I would like to see for everyone is a community of heathens in the area that they can depend on, that they can build with, and that they can develop a culture in their area where they're not the only heathen. They can get together, they can do ritual together if they so choose, if they choose to mix weird with one another, or they can just simply enjoy one another's company and not be the only heathen for 100 miles, There's more heathens around you than you know, and it's growing constantly. We get more and more people come to, and I'd say the culture or the general culture, even though every individual tribe is their own individual culture, and every hearth within that is their own hearth culture. Hence the essence of today's video. But in general, we have more people coming to heathenry as a blanket term because of pop culture media. Things like Vikings and Norsemen, things that are popularizing heathenry and the Norse gods in the eyes of people. Now, that's a double-edged sword because, there's a lot of bad information out there. These guys are going to run into a lot of brosa-true BS. They're going to run into a lot of racist ideology. A lot of people who just don't get it and are focusing on the wrong superficial things as opposed to what actually matters, which are our deeds and our relationships with the gods and with the others around us, our Engar. So, we get a lot of people coming, and it's going to continue to grow. You're going to want to build a community eventually, but it doesn't necessarily have to be right away. We talked in our previous video about grassroots building, about slow down, don't try to rush it, don't try to force it, that tribe will happen organically, etc., etc. And that's true. Okay, that is going to happen eventually. So we're not going to focus on that in this particular little instance. What we're going to talk about now is the hearth culture. Because like I said, heathenry starts at home. So if you want to build a strong community, build a strong home, give people something to gather around, be that example, be that beacon that draws people to you. If you are maintaining your rituals and you are building your luck, then you will find people gravitate towards you. You will find that other heathens will just seemingly find you out because it's that draw of that spiritual tie. We can sense one another. And not all the time, but there is a metaphysical pull. The web of weird tugging against itself, as it were. And so we kind of get drawn to one another in a lot of ways, tend to find each other in our spheres, because while the number is growing, there's still not a whole lot of heathens. So I think we can all agree on the fact that heathenry in the home is the most important thing. As far as the why, I don't need to necessarily drive into that. We understand that this is the seed that grows the rest of the tree. So instead of the why, which is one of the things that I do love to ramble on about, let's talk a little bit about the how. This is actually what matters to you guys. It's how do I improve my heathenry at home? And so that's a thing. I'm actually going to do my next video on blended homes. So hopefully you guys will tune in and see that. That'll be next week's video. But there's some complications sometimes in the modern arena of building heathenry within the home, and that is because of blended homes. So we're going to come back to that and touch on that. So for the time being, we're just going to roll with that heathenry is the predominant culture within the home, and then we'll come back to that later. So save your questions on that. We're going to touch on that in a video, okay? So things you can do that will help you to build your heathenry in the home, okay? Now, there's a number of different ways you can do this. And the big thing to remember is that what goes on in your hall is your call, okay? I've got my saying, not my hall, not my call. That's a thing that I use out a lot. I've seen it pop up on other memes on other pages and things now. So it's started to make the rounds. But not my hall, not my call. This one, it is my hall, it is my call. And this falls into what we call individual cultic practice, or hearth culture. Now, hearth culture is the culture of the hearth, the culture of that family, that household. Each household is sacrosanct. You have complete authority over what you do within your own household. Nobody else can dictate that. Like within my tribe, okay? I do not dictate what my individual tribe members do. I can't do that. That's not the point. That's not what I am. I'm not some dictatorial individual who's got supreme power over his people. No. I serve a role and help to guide and help the people along, but it's up to them on what they do in their homes with their heathenry. I can give them ideas, I can help build on it, but the sanctity of the home is the sanctity of the home, and I would never encroach upon that. So as you build your communities, you start off with the family, and your hearth culture, your individual cultic practice, and then You build up a tribal culture around that, which somewhat reflects the individual cultures, the individual hearth cultures that make it up. You're bringing it in there, okay? So, that little aside, everybody's going to do some things a little bit different, and that's okay. I wanted to hit that point because it's very, very important when you do start building tribe that you recognize the fact that you do not need to superimpose your hearth practices on top of anyone else, and you do not need to change your hearth practices to reflect the beliefs of another. That's not what this is about, okay? So you also do not need to completely alter your hearth practices to mirror the tribal practice, because tribal practice is about the interaction of the tribe as a whole. So it's reflective of the tribe as a whole. Individual cultic practice is about the interactions within your household, both with the divine, the spiritual, all of that, and each other. That's all within the household versus tribal. So anyway, little aside there, but back to the house, okay? So in order to build your own individual culture within the house, this encompasses a lot of things. This encompasses aesthetics, the things that you like to see and listen to and read, the overall aesthetic, the look, the feel of things, the gestalt of your home is that's an important thing. So, and it varies from person to person as to what that's going to be, and that will impact your heathenry on at least a superficial level, because the more elements of your heathenry that you bring into the home, as far as aesthetically speaking, the more it's brought to mind, the more mindful you are of things like acknowledging the ancestors, of stopping by your house white altar. Both of those we'll come back to here in a minute. So, you know, pictures, little sayings, like you guys can see these little things in the background here. Forget the Ansel Adams that came with The Office. I don't really care about that. But these are little excerpts from the Havamal that I have all around the office. I've had requests before to go through and explain the different ones that I have up on the wall and why I have them. I may do that at some point in time. I don't know. I'm not sure that would be a very interesting video. But anyway, I surround myself in my office with these because I want to be mindful of the different sayings and the different things that I am working on, or that are that I need constantly in the forefront, because there are parts either that I'm trying to bring out in myself, that I'm trying to get better of, sayings that I'd like to memorize, things like that. So I surround myself with these things. And the other things that you can't see in my office are things like a little brass Viking ship that was given to me by some friends 20 years ago. And I love that thing. Plus some other little Viking and heathen doodads, things like that. My office white altar itself, I've shown you Rumble Thump before, but at least his idol in my idol worship video. But I've got a whole bunch of stuff on his table there. And you guys see it in all the different videos. You know, for instance, if you look at, I'm going to use Jesse. I'm going to use you as an example, dude, all right? If you look at Jesse's videos over at Midgard's Musings, we're going to talk about aesthetic here real quick. The outfit that he wears specifically for his videos. The bracers that he wears specifically for the videos. He puts on a character, as it were. I mean, the character's still himself, but he puts on his business attire to step up and do the video, because it helps to put him in a frame of mind. At least I'm putting words in your mouth, dude, but I hope I'm hitting close to home. Anyway, it's the same with anything. You put on this uniform to do the job, and it shifts the frame of mind, so you're where you need to be to do that. And so, you know, I have certain things that when I'm going to do my Goldie work at home, when I'm going to lead a ritual, I get these certain items out, or I put these certain items on. And that is, it helps me to prepare my mind. A lot of people will utilize tunics or, you know, period clothing, things like that, to help them get in that frame of mind. One, it's fun, of course, to play dress up, but two, there is actually some benefit, psychologically speaking and spiritually speaking, to wearing a uniform for ritual. The idea is that it helps to prepare the mind, which facilitates that connection because it allows you to get into that kind of ritual mind space that you need in order to be able to go back and forth with the gods and goddesses, or with the Vatir, with the ancestors, whatever. It helps to prime the pump, as it were. And so that's an important thing. It's aesthetics. It's look, it's feel, comfort kind of things. So, I mean, these are important. Having books around that you like to read that are on the subject, movies, things like that. So aesthetics are part of it, okay? So I've talked too long on aesthetics, but like back to the Jesse example, everything on his table, everything that he does in his videos is specific to his heathenry, and therefore kind of sets the mood for everything, okay? So that's an example of how the aesthetic can play into hearth culture, okay? You can, if you surround yourself with things like that in the home, not necessarily like his specific imagery, that's his specific imagery. I've seen a bunch of different takes on how to do it, each with some very unique kind of inspirations, different time periods, some very, very modern, but still very impressive and very heathen arts and sculptures and things like that. Some wonderfully modern pieces of like paintings and photographs that are very heathen in nature, like Thor and Odin and things like that, or elements of the modern world that pertain to heathenry, and put up on the wall, but very, very modern. Some with the very, very old too. So it depends on your particular aesthetic. It depends on your particular inspirations, but it helps to set a mood, helps to put you in a frame of mind, and helps to kind of get where you're going. So within the home, develop your aesthetic. Decide what you want, what makes you comfortable, and how much of your heathenry do you want to be out in the open and around you, I, for one, like to include my altars in the main space because I like them to be ever present, and I like to have certain heathen items hanging on the wall, particular things of sentimental value, because it helps to get me in that headspace. So that's the same reason I wear my hammer and my little vault nut down here. Yes, somebody asked me what this was. It is, and I know you can hardly tell, there's a little vault nut. To be quite honest, there's a whole debate about the appropriateness of the vault nut, whether or not even it is a thing. I don't care. I use it because I associate it with Odin, and whether or not it's historically accurate, I don't care. I associate it with Odin, that's why I wear it. Helps to, frame of mind kind of thing, mindfulness. So, aesthetic aside, let's talk about some actual physical practices now. One of the things that I highly, highly, highly recommend is daily offerings. I've talked about this before. I just kind of wanted to touch on it again. Daily offerings to the housewife, the husvetir, or the Kofgod, depending on the terminology used for it, the house spirit, the god of the house. It's a local landwight who is responsible for that property. It's not necessarily tied to the house itself, as it's tied to the land and the property as a whole that the house is on, and is therefore the spark that gives life to the house. Because you can lose the house to fire, tornado, things like that, and the spirit still remains. So it's tied to the location as to the house itself. Anyway, I give out offering to my housewife every day because I want to build that relationship. And it's an acknowledgement, it's a practice of saying, hi, good morning, how you doing? I share my morning coffee with them. And then I do the same thing for my ancestors. This is a daily practice that helps to kind of build that relationship. Plus, it helps to keep things in a frame of mind. It helps to build that heathen mindset. When you start the day and you start out, like I start out with a taboo. I will not drink coffee before my housewife or my ancestors are made offerings to. I won't break my fast until I do that. And I told you guys all this before. It's kind of redundant, but still. It's ritualized and it's purposeful. And it helps to start the day with this mindset, this ritual. So since this is something that I do on a daily basis, this is something that I jump into, this is something that I maintain, it helps to build my hearth culture. It establishes the ancestral ties, it establishes the ties with the housewife, the husvetir. Now, I make routine offerings. I like to give ancestral offerings. I like to go out and spend time with my Vetir in the yard. Things that you can do, again with the how, to help build that is to go out and develop things in the land that help to encourage the spirits of the land to bring their energies in. Positive energies, good energies. Bring out things that feed the local birds and wildlife. Set up things that keep out predatory creatures, that help to kind of keep coyotes or bobcats, things like that at bay. Establish a boundary, because boundaries are important. Warding is important. Establish a boundary for your property and start to fill that boundary with energy. Fill that boundary with your culture. Develop the look that you want and build a relationship with the Vetir. Build a relationship with the land and develop. Keep moving, keep doing. As you go through, you worry about things like daily rituals. You worry about things like the aesthetic of the home. That's a thing. But there are other aspects of hearth practice, individual cultic practice, hearth culture that you fall into. And these are going to be things like even which holidays you celebrate. Because there may be a tribal calendar that you celebrate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your individual hearth culture doesn't incorporate other ones. So, when Ridgar started, we had our chieftain was of a more Anglo-Saxon bent, and I was more Norse Icelandic. So there were some specific Anglo-Saxon things that he did that we didn't do, and then we kind of created this melting pot when we got together as a tribe. So decide on that. Study up and decide which elements of holiday you want to bring in. Things that you can do to help develop, again, that culture. Understanding what your holidays are and why they're important to you. And then that way, when you get together as a tribe, you can say, well, we all celebrate these in common. It would be cool if we could do something together. That's why partially we do Yule the way we do, is because there were certain commonalities in Yule that we could build on and therefore create these tribal ties. So holidays are a great way to do it. We've talked about ritual, we've talked about daily practices, culture, aesthetic aspects, the holidays. So all of these things kind of build towards developing your individual cultic practices, your individual hearth culture. You're also going to see differences in the way rituals are done, which rituals are done, because somebody may have a family ritual that is not reflected in the tribal culture, something specific to their family, such as a tradition of sitting down and making sacrificial ornaments at Yuletide, something like that. That may not be a globalized tribal ritual, but is something that's very important to the household. Completely aside, we had a ritual growing up where my mom, during Yule every year, would want to watch White Christmas. That was her movie, and we would watch that movie routinely every year. That was part of the Yule season. It had to happen. And that was ritualized, and it was important to us. And so that was part of our hearth culture, is that we did that. Nowadays, it's me and I Remember Mama. That's my movie. That is that mark of the season for me. And so that's part of my hearth culture, The way we do Mother's Night is part of our hearth culture, and it has grown out to become what it will be for the tribal culture as well. But the rest of Yule is set aside as individual hearth culture and how we do things. Now, you'll also get into some of the magical practices, seder, spework, things like that. It's going to vary, okay, very heavily. Somebody may be an herbalist, and that may be a very strong part of their hearth culture. Now, it's an element that you can bring a flavor of that to the tribal culture, especially because if that person is strong and good at what they do, then they can inform the rest of the tribe and not necessarily have everybody else doing herbal work, but have the herbal presence be felt and known. Same thing if you're like a rune reader or a Sjerven or a spekone. If you're doing these magical practices or things like that, their presence can be felt at a tribal level, but it's very much developed at home because it's very much a personal thing. And that's fine. The big thing that I want you guys to get out of all of this is that hearth culture is yours to build. everything about hearth culture is your decision and how you want to do it. I highly recommend, basing some things on tradition. Don't go way off into left field. Look into, some historical elements, but then definitely, build and develop your own thing. I do not allow, so try not to allow, tribal culture to dictate hearth culture. I want hearth culture to be organic in their own, and then when we get together, there's tribal culture. The two are not the same. The individual cultic practice and the hearth culture inform tribal culture, but tribal culture does not dictate hearth culture. So anyway, I've rambled on for a while. This is something that we'll come back to off and on. The big thing here is to build your own hearth culture, the culture of your hearth, your home, your individual cultic practice. And remember that there's a lot of things in heathenry, a lot of things that people will write off as UPG, that's actually individual cultic practice. And that is unique to that individual, that's unique to their world and their specific culture. It does not apply in a globalized discussion of heathenry. Like if we're talking about the generalities of arch heathenry, etc., 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 insights from individual cultic practice may or may not apply because it may not globalize to the time period or individuals of which we're speaking of in that conversation. So keep that in mind. Just because something's your own individual cultic practice or your own hearth culture does not mean it globalizes to the rest of heathenry. It would be inappropriate for you to try to push that onto the rest of heathenry. A lot of the historical guys, like hardcore recons, okay? You guys hear me talk about hardcore recons periodically. They have individual cultic practice and hearth culture too. Typically, they don't talk about it. They only talk about the historical stuff that they actually have records for and can back up, because that's something that they can talk about objectively with research, etc., etc. They don't tend to get into the individual cultic practices or the hearth culture because it's none of your business. It doesn't matter what you think about their individual hearth culture because you do not impact that. You're not their Innengarth, therefore you have no impact. If you are their Innengarth, then you already know it and you already have impact on it. So, at least elements, depending on how in the circle you are. So, keep that in mind when you're interacting with hardcore recons, is that they may seem like in conversation that they don't have this. They do. They do. Absolutely they do. They have a well fleshed out culture themselves, unique to every individual, unique to each tribe, they, whatever it is that they call themselves. They have their culture that has built up. They have individual cultic practices and hearth cultures that have developed as well. It's there. Okay, everybody's got it. We just all look at things a little bit differently sometimes. So anyway, that's a ramble for about a half hour, give or take, after I take out the edits, on individual cultic practice and hearth culture. If you guys have any questions, you know how to hit me up below. I intend to do some follow-up stuff on some of these cultic practices and some how-to stuff over time. If you see something that I've done a video on before and I've mentioned a series that I want to start and I haven't done it, feel free to hit me up on the Facebook group, which you can find down below in the contact information, or email, anything like that. Let me know. Say, hey, I'd really like it if you came back to this one that you talked about doing a series on, because I will get distracted and I'll keep rolling and doing other stuff. Like I'm filming at, it's an unseemly hour right now. That's why there's no soft glow over here. You guys can't see it, but there's a window right here. Usually there's a soft glow over here that balances out the harsh fluorescent light on this side. But the sun's not up yet because it's too early for human beings to be awake right now. But I gotta work with what I gotta work with. So there's whole reasons why I'm at work this early, so don't worry about it. But things have been crazy. So I'm filling in where I can, doing what I can with it, trying to communicate where I can. I'm just trying to keep 2 feet on the ground and my head upright. As long as I can do that, then I think we'll be all right. So anyway, guys, hail and thank you. Appreciate you watching, and may your ancestors smile on you. Now, you're also going to get down into some of the magic practices, like Sjerven, like, there's a lot of cuts in this one in there. And other divinatory practices, or anything that manipulates weird... breakfast. Hold on. I gotta put that on mute. Okay, hold on. Right, tons of video ideas, but still. All right, and shite. Don't do that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And set up of some social contract with other individuals and trying to make some kind of group work. This is pause. All right. All right, we're gonna. And so I do that every day without fail. And it's important to me. So it's important to me. Yes, I know it's important to me. Now where do you go from there, dude? Think this out. Make it good. You guys don't get to see this. This is where I brainstorm in the background. I do not write these things down before I do a video. That's why they ramble so bad. I sit down and literally started this video with I'm doing hearth and cultic practices and then just started talking. So this is where we are. Fun. All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nope. Nope. Hold on a second. Still getting my mind around it. Wait. Think I got it? Yeah. There we go.